I always thought my life happened behind the scenes. I wasn't the woman who shook hands at long tables, nor the voice that closed deals. I was the person who made sure everything worked before someone important walked into the room. I was the secretary who knew the full itinerary without looking at my phone, who anticipated delays, moods, risks, and demands as if I had a sixth sense trained by the fear of making mistakes. My boss, Alexander Reed, was a billionaire. Not the kind who makes noise on social media, but the kind who moves markets with a short email. With him, life had a different rhythm. Private airports, suites, and meetings. My name is Jade Carter, and for a long time I believed my role was to be invisible. At first, I didn't notice when the line began to shift. It was gradual, almost polite. A look that lasted 1 second longer. An attention that didn't need to exist. Small things that on their own could be interpreted as respect, gratitude, professional admiration. And I clung to that interpretation because it was safer. Traveling with him was routine. London, Zurich, Dubai, New York. I organized folders, adjusted the schedule, confirmed times, handled emergencies.
Hold on a second. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Then drop a comment. What would you do next and why?
I saw luxury as a set, not as a promise. I walked into places thinking about what still needed to be done, not what all of it could mean for me. I was efficient. I was organized. I was, above all, loyal to the job. But loyalty also creates intimacy. And intimacy, even when it isn't planned, makes room for things we'd rather not name. I had a life outside of that. Simple, quiet, real. I had a boyfriend, Ethan Miller, and he was my ground. He didn't have a famous last name or an expensive car or influential friends. He had hands marked by work, a tight routine, and a clean way of loving me, without games. Ethan was always counting money at the end of the month, but he never counted affection. With him, I didn't have to perform anything. I could come home tired and still be received as if I were good news. I loved Ethan precisely because he didn't offer a bigger version of the world. He offered peace. The problem was that every day I worked inside a world that seemed to offer everything. I began to notice that difference in my own body, in the way I dressed without realizing it, more refined, more proper, in the way I spoke, avoiding certain expressions, in my growing intolerance for things that used to be normal, a long line, a delayed flight, a crowded restaurant. That scared me because I recognized the beginning of a silent transformation. And it was in one of those habits, an immaculate hotel, a corridor that smelled like expensive perfume and fresh cleanliness, a night after tense meetings, that I understood, without anyone needing to spell it out, that Alexander Reed was no longer seeing me as just an employee. When it finally happened, the moment when doubt became certainty, it didn't come with scandal or touch or an exaggerated scene. Alexander had a way of treating feelings like decisions, and that day I felt he had made a decision. I began to look at my apartment with different eyes. The small kitchen, the worn couch, the sound of the street coming in through the window. I began to realize I was proud of that simplicity, but I was also tired. A tiredness accumulated by someone who always had to think before buying, always had to calculate, always had to work twice as hard to get halfway there. And then the other side would come. Hotels where everything was already ready, clothes delivered to the room, cars waiting, doors opening. A future where effort wouldn't disappear, but anxiety would lessen. Ethan began to feel the distance between us, not because I stopped loving him, but because I was split inside. I would come home and even when my body was there, my mind was still in airports, schedules, commitments. I started to wonder, in silence, whether love was enough to sustain a whole lifetime of struggle. And right after that, I hated myself for thinking it, because it felt like ingratitude towards a man who had never given me a reason to doubt his character. I found myself trapped in a deadlock that wasn't only moral, it was existential. If I chose Alexander, I would gain a life many people dream of: security, status, comfort, a kind of power that spills into everything around it. I could help my family without fear. I could breathe without feeling the weight of the next bill. I could stop surviving and finally live. But I also knew what I would lose. I would lose Ethan, and with him, I would lose the only part of my world that didn't demand that I be bigger, better, more perfect. I realized the choice wasn't between a rich man and a poor man. It was between two kinds of love. The love that comes with the promise of elevation and the love that comes with permanence. One love that pulled me upward and another that held me steady on the ground. And in that exhaustion, I began to understand the truth. I wasn't only choosing between two people, I was choosing who I wanted to become. I needed to choose. I came home at the end of the day with a heavy feeling in my chest, as if I were carrying an invisible suitcase. The apartment was quiet. I sat down, breathed, and for the first time, I didn't look for the perfect line. I looked for the truth. I chose Ethan. I chose the love that knew me without idealizing me. The man who loved me in the real size of my world. The simple home that didn't have automatic doors, but had presence. And when I chose, I felt immediate peace and grief at the same time, as if my body understood I was saving something essential and burying another possibility forever. The next day, I went to the office earlier. I held myself steady, the way I always did. I asked to speak with Alexander and handed him my resignation letter. As I walked out, I shook. I wanted to go back. I wanted to think about the money, the opportunities, the easier future. I wanted to run towards luxury the way someone runs towards anesthesia. But I didn't go back. I didn't choose the easier path. I chose the path that let me breathe. And for the first time, I realized that true luxury wasn't a suite at the top of a building in New York. It was reaching the end of the day and not having to lie to anyone, not even to myself.
If that ending caught you off guard, don't stop here. The next story begins with a message, and nothing is the same after it.